Perfect. Hello, and welcome to another week of the Lost Confederacy channel. This is week 2 of the 13-week fiscal program of recovery for American prisoners of war. As always, you have myself, Chief Biko. Today we have Chief Alligator as well as Chief Quietwater. And here, as always, we focus more so on that first letter in the acronym APOW, which is American. Again, we are on the 1968 Civil Rights Act, better known as the Indian Rights Act. And before we get started into the readings, we're going to continue to play this Lyndon B. Johnson video of him specifying the Negro. But again, as always, we have not seen the word Negro, colored, Black, African American, or other reclassification term deemed on our people or put on our people within any of these documents. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and play that video. That way we can continue to understand exactly what's going on here.
Even while President Johnson talked to Chancellor Klaus about America's responsibility in a time of crisis and challenge, word came from Capitol Hill that Congress had passed and sent to the White House the Civil Rights Act of 1968. Included in the measure was a landmark open housing bill, which, when fully effective, would forbid discrimination in approximately 80% of all housing offered for rent or for sale in the United States.
I do not exaggerate when I say that the proudest moments of my presidency have been times such as this, when I have signed into law the promises of a century. I shall never forget that it is more than 100 years ago when Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. But it was a proclamation. It was not a fact. And in the Civil Rights Act of 1964, we affirm through law that men equal under God are also equal when they seek a job, when they go to get a meal in a restaurant, or when they seek lodging for the night in any state in the Union. And now the Negro families no longer suffer the humiliation of being turned away because of their race. In the Civil Rights Act of 1965, we affirm through law for every citizen in this land the most basic right of democracy, the right of a citizen to vote in an election in his country. In the 5 states where the act had its greater impact, Negro voter registration has already more than doubled. Now with this bill, the voice of justice speaks again. It proclaims that fair housing for all human beings who live in this country is now a part of the American way of life. We all know that the roots of injustice run deep. But violence cannot redress a solitary wrong or remedy a single unfairness. And we just must put our shoulders together and put a stop to both. The time is here. Action must be now.
All right. So as stated earlier, I'm going to continue to play that video as long as we're still within this 1968 Civil Rights Act. And definitely have to address a lot of things. This week was the anniversary of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. That was actually April 4th, 1968. And the document that we're reading now, which is the 1968 Civil Rights Act, came out a week later. As you all heard within that video, President Lyndon B. Johnson talks about the Negro now having these rights the Negro now being able to vote, the Negro now being able to have lodging at different motels and hotels. But throughout all of these documents that we've read thus far in regards to the Civil Rights Acts, nothing regarding the Negro, nothing regarding Blacks, colored, African American, any other reclassification term that we've been, again, placed underneath. But it's very important how, or very interesting also, how a week later, a week after Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated, we have this 1968 Civil Rights Act, which again, thus far that we've read through, does not mention anything regarding the Negro, yet we have a president who is proclaiming that, or is announcing that this document addresses the Negro's plight. So definitely just kind of want to build on that and the significance of that, because also we also saw that, what was his name? Trump had his indictment hearing, or beginning of his indictment hearing, on the same day as the anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King being assassinated. So again, how they'll pile over our people, our particular leaders in regards to things like this, but they'll promote certain narratives, promote certain lies. Again, the lie that these Civil Rights Acts actually applied specifically to our group. So I'll let everybody kind of build on that before we jump into today's readings.
Yeah, I think it's definitely important for us to know and understand the chronological timeline of how things happen in regards to the assassination or murder of Martin Luther King. And we just can't forget, I just don't know how to even put it, but we can't forget that we were never included. We need to stop trying to include ourselves into what was never meant for us. And respect, what our previous people did, like Martin Luther King and all of that. But at the same time, we have to understand that all of that was just whitewashed. And we got to understand where we are now in society. Nothing has changed in what is it, 55 years? Like literally nothing has changed, but we still want to get out there and we still want to march and we still want to be nonviolent in regards to thinking that something is going to change for us. And it hasn't in 55 years, so we have to do something different. So that's my stance on it. Just understanding that what has been done these last 55 years has not worked. And where we are now, we got to change things up, basically.
Yeah, the downside with knowledge is the more that you learn, the more it's a double-edged sword, because now you're held accountable. I was sharing with my mom today about this information, and for her to, she's clueless. She's clueless, and it's a lot of people from that generation that don't really know what happened in the 60s. And then we've got two separate generations here on this channel as well. Generation X, and then what would your generation be, Chief Biko? Millennial?
Yep, millennial.
So we got two generations that don't know what happened. This should be common knowledge that the United States government killed Martin Luther King, and then 7 days later, Lyndon Baines Johnson did that speech that we're playing prior to every video, and he told a bold-faced lie. He said that the Negro now has this and the Negro now has that. However, we're taking the time to actually read the documents, and there's no word, there's no Negro in writing, there's no Black in writing, there's no colored in writing. So not only do we have to look at the people run government, so the Europeans run government, but then we also have to look at our people. How have 55 years gone by and people who look like us, who were still alive from that era, never made sure that we knew what happened? Now, we talked on Copper Empress channel about power. One of the things that I've learned about obtaining power in my personal life is everybody has to go, let me speak for me, I'm not gonna speak for nobody else. There's a ceiling that has to be broken within your family when you choose to be more than average. If we're going to choose to have power as a group of people, we're going to have adult, uncomfortable conversations with those people that are still living from that era that have failed to inform us about what happened. That's the way the European media can have Trump's hearing the same day of MLK's assassination. And it's like, if they don't put it in our face through propaganda via media, we don't know about it. And that just shows how far we've fallen as a group of people. We don't even honor the people who stood up and fought for us, let alone even aware of it. I'm gonna ask y'all a question. Chief Quietwater, Chief Biko, how many people that you know, family or friends or associates, actually knew what April 4th was this week in reference to MLK being killed? How many people you think even know?
I think, in my opinion, I think people know that he was killed. Yeah, well, maybe not. I don't know. Good question. Several people that I personally know, but I don't know, like, kind of on the mass level, if a lot of people really know the significance of that date. We know the birth date, but I don't think we know when he was actually assassinated. I don't think that date is really pinned in our head.
I would definitely agree. I would say it's few and far between. I'll probably say less than 1 out of 10 people would actually know the actual date of MLK's assassination. Like Chief Quietwater stated, definitely understand or know the birth date. Some may be able to remember or recite to the I Have a Dream speech, but when it comes to the assassination, I doubt I doubt it's a large percentage. I'll say that. I doubt it's very low.
The people that you know?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay. So then in addition to that, my next question would be, how many of us are aware of what these 3 civil rights acts did in the 1960s? As a group of people, this should be common knowledge, just like we all know certain songs from Motown and Michael Jackson. We should know this off the back of our head. Oh yeah, the 1964 Civil Rights Act, yeah, that ended desegregation and integrated the schools. Oh yeah, 1965, that was the Voting Rights Act. 1968, that was the Indian Rights Act. We all should know this because it's part of our story on the land. How many people do y'all think y'all know, family, friends, associates, actually even know that chronological timeline about our history on this land?
Now that for sure, I know not a lot of people know. I mean, I really didn't know. I've heard of it, but no, I myself, until I was just introduced to just chronologically how it all happened, I wasn't aware myself.
What about you, Chief Biko?
Same. I'd say it's about the same for me.
Okay.
Same.
And so that's what makes us niggas.
Mhm.
That's why other group of people come here and don't want to be bothered with us, because think about it. If I'm coming from being last place in Africa, I'm gonna use Africa as an example. If I'm coming from Nigeria and my family is fucked up, destitute, pauper status, poor, indigent, and I come to this land, why would I want to be associated with the people in last place in the new world when I'm coming here to make a new start for my family? So it's not these immigrants' fault that they have disdain for us. It's our fault because we don't know our history. I'm gonna stop right there.
Again, just excellent points. And that just goes back to why we're doing what we're doing every Sunday, going through these acts, going through the actual history in a chronological order, posting it online. That way people can follow whenever, at their own leisure. Again, because it's very important. It's stated, a group that does not know its history will have fucked up politics. And that's exactly where we are currently. Not knowing who we are, in last place in every aspect, every industry, even though we are of this land and have created everything on this land. So great points. Without further ado, that's going to lead us into our American inventor for this week. Take off there, Chief Quietwater.
Ready? Let's see here. So this week, the inventor this week is W.S. Campbell. I really couldn't find a lot of information about him. I'm not even sure what WS even stands for. I don't have where he was born or where he passed away or anything like that, but he invented the self-setting animal trap. The patent number for that is 246369. The patent date is August 30th, 1881. And basically the objective of this self-setting animal trap was to provide a self-setting trap which can be made large enough to capture large animals of prey or small enough to catch rodents, other such small animals as are destructive to crops, and which trap, instead of keeping the animals alive to be killed in the trap before it can be taken out, it drowns it basically as soon as it drops in the rear platform of the actual trap.
That's a prime example of what we just talked about being niggas. The running myth amongst our group of people is we don't like to hunt, we don't like to be in the woods, you know. We give that to the European, you know, the European loves to hunt XYZ. You just gave the invention for animal trapping, which means we were in the woods initially. We were doing the hunting. That was
not only that, also tending to the land too, because they made it specifically so the rodents and the animals didn't destroy the crops.
Right. So you see how people who look like us will get on TV and they will make it seem like that's something that we've never done. You just debunked that with that invention. Yeah, you can't come up with an animal trapping device and you're not in the woods hunting animals. Thanks for that. Right. Thanks for the invention. That was a great invention.
Definitely a great one. Definitely a great one. That's going to segue us into our Dr. Carter G. Woodson definition, as well as actually the quotes and then the definitions. So for this week's quote, I'm going to go with quote number 8, especially since, you know, for those Christian believers, as far as this day being Easter, I'm going to go ahead and read this quote. In the church, where we have much freedom and independence, we must get rid of preachers who are not prepared to help the people whom they exploit. The public must refuse to support men of this type. Ministers who are the creations of the old educational system must be awakened, and if this is impossible, they must be dethroned. Those who keep the people in ignorance and play upon their emotions must be exiled. The people have never been taught what religion is, for most of the preachers find it easier to stimulate the superstition which develops in the unenlightened mind. Religion in such hands then becomes something with which you take advantage of weak people. Why try to enlighten the people in such matters when superstition serves just as well for exploitation? And I think that just rhymes perfectly with what we were discussing earlier in regards to, one, not knowing our history, and then allowing others and other people's gods, lords, etc., be our source of empowerment. Again, as they stated, or as he stated within this quote, you know, relying on a lot of superstition rather than actually enlightening the mind to something that's more beneficial, something that's more resourceful for our group of people. In returns, like Chief Quietwater stated, being able to create something that's going to feed the people, actually nourish your family by creating a trap for rodents. That's going to be able to nourish something for your family by making sure that those rodents or those animals don't get to your crops that have been feeding your family. So I thought that was a great quote for this week. And I'll let you all kind of build on that as well.
Chief Quietwater.
She on mute, yeah.
You on mute. Yeah, for me, I'm gonna go ahead and go with this sentence right here where it says, ministers who are the creations of the old educational system must be awakened. And if this is impossible, they must be dethroned. Awaken means you know your bloodline. Let's stop playing these games like you don't know that you Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, and Seminole. You know exactly who you are, right? But you're coming to us and you're trying to attach our history to an allegory. which is what religion is. Let's just be honest. History and law go together. History and religion does not go together. So I know my Hebrew Israelites gonna get in their feelings. My Muslims gonna get in their feelings. My Christians gonna get in their feelings. We're showing you on this channel. You want to know what happened on a particular landmass? Read the laws of that land. In particular, the supreme law of the land. Read the treaties which supersede this constitution. So yeah, that's where I'm at with it. These people know who they are, and you're part of the old educational system, having us grown people walk around with a belief and a hope system when adults should be operating off faith. Kids deal with belief systems. Kids put teeth up under the pillow and hope for the tooth fairy to come. Kids go to sleep early and wait for Santa Claus to magically come down the chimney. Adults supposed to be dealing with facts. So that's where we at with it. Y'all need to stop the bullshit, and y'all need to come on up, get with the game, start informing people of what's really going on, or step to the side.
I agree. I'm just going to highlight this one last point as well, like you stated, with the dethroned, but also exiled. So those who keep our people in ignorance, similar to the question that we polled today within the chat, are those people who continue to call us Negro, Black, colored, African-American, are they our enemies? And if so, because matter of fact, not even if so, we know that they are, because we're reading the documents, we're seeing that who we are on this land. We're not Black, we're not Negro, we're not colored. So these people are keeping us in ignorance. And again, playing on our emotions, as some of you may have seen with the whole Tennessee expulsion. As they're trying to play on your emotions, we need to make sure that these people are exiled, because they are the enemy. Why are you calling us something that you know we aren't? Especially when you know your own bloodline at that. So again, these are just conversations. These are conversations that need to be had amongst the family before we settle with anything, because they are important conversations and they must be addressed. I'll go ahead and continue with this week's legal definitions. Number 1, American, indigenous to America. Number 2, descendants, one who follows in the bloodline of an ancestor, either lineally or collaterally. Number 3, slavery, a situation in which one person has absolute power over the life, fortune, and liberty of another. Number 4, prisoner of war, a person, usually a soldier, who is captured by or surrenders to the enemy in wartime. Number 5, school, any institution at which instruction is given in a particular discipline. Number 6, education, an enlightening experience. Number 7, recovery, a return to a normal state of mind, a normal state of health, mind, or strength, the action or process of regaining possession of something stolen or lost. For the maroon historical points, number 1 was a person escaping slavery, seeking freedom, or breaking the law. Number 2, providing unity and a strong defense came first. Number 3, maroon leaders were first and foremost military figures. Number 4, maroons established guerrilla warfare, planting sharp sticks in thick grass. And number 5, maroons knew their European enemies' languages, defenses, and plans. And that is our maroon historical points and legal definitions. So without further ado, we'll jump into the Civil Rights Act. But prior to that, we have to continue to understand and continue to compare and contrast, weigh each side of the coin, where we are. So as we see here within this document, before we jump back into where we left off, we're seeing that they have a definition for the word Indian. And it states here, Indian means any person who will be subject to the jurisdiction of the United States as an Indian under Section 1153, Title 18, United States Code. If that person were to commit an offense listed in that section in Indian country to which that section applies. So going back to that video we played at the beginning of the live, Lyndon B. Johnson, he's mentioning the Negro this, the Negro that. But none of these documents that we've read thus far regarding the Civil Rights Act have any legal, lawful definition of the word Negro within these acts. So again, we have to ask ourselves and ask the people who continue to promote that these acts are specifically for our group, why don't they specifically mention our group? And if they do specifically mention our group, which we obviously know that they haven't, which we read thus far, why aren't there any definitions describing who those people actually are, like we're seeing here?
Chief
So-
Quab, are you able to unmute?
Yeah, I'm not sure what was going on. Okay.
I'll let you go ahead and build. But again, just go ahead and continue to have that in the back of your mind. Okay, they have a whole legal or lawful definition of what the word Indian or who Indians are in regards to this act, but you have not seen anything like that in regards to Negroes.
If you can start on your miseducation of the Negro code first, Chief Quietwater, and then if you want to build on that.
Pull that back up for you too.
Okay. Do what now? I'm sorry.
It was a quote 8.
Okay.
Have your perspective on what you
Those-
said.
So, yeah, what I pull from that is the people who don't tell the truth of our group, that keep, that know the truth, but kind of keep us suppressed with the real knowledge that we need in regards to knowing where we come from and knowing that we are the American. And what else? I'm sorry. The definition of the Indian.
Well, that was pretty much it.
Okay.
Also, the definition of the Indian, how they are very specific in regards to who that is.
Right.
Like that in regards to our group of people.
Right. Of course, we're never included in anything, which it specifically says it there. So we know now what the true definition of the Indian is.
Can you bring back up that definition real quick? And shout out to everybody that participated in the polling that we posted yesterday. Because what we're basically going to continue to point out, because repetition is the key to learning. We understand that these acts were never explained to us growing up through the school system. And so what we're doing now is based on proof of claim, we're letting the documents speak for themselves. Wait, okay. What we're saying, if you can scroll up where it says Indian rights so they can see the title. You were there.
Okay.
Right there. Scroll up.
Yep.
Right there. So what we're saying, Title II of the 1968 Civil Rights Act, this act was passed 1 week after the United States government assassinated Martin Luther King in Memphis, Tennessee. Congress makes the United States government's law. Congress gave a definition for what an Indian is. What we're saying is Congress has never given the definition, like you're looking at right now on the screen, of what a Black is, of what a Negro is, or what a colored is. We started off on this channel reading treaties. We've read the Emancipation Proclamation. We've read the Amnesty document by Andrew Johnson, who preceded Abraham Lincoln. We've read the Freedmen's Bureau Act. We've read the 1866 Civil Rights Act. We've read these lawful documents that come through Congress. What we're proving, not talking, what we're proving is the United States government, Congress makes law. They've never given a definition for Negro, Black, and colored. So the question is, from a common sense standpoint, why the fuck are we calling ourselves something that has no definition to it under this government? It's just that simple, y'all. This government has never defined what Negro, Black, and colored is, or Afro-American, which happened in '88. So I'm in middle school when Afro-American became a thing. And shout out to Copper Empress for saying, how you gonna be older than your classification? Because I too have lived long enough to be older than the damn classification. So this is a question we have to ask ourselves. Why are we calling ourselves something that the government has never lawfully recognized or defined in law? This is law. Congress makes the law. Anything y'all want to build on that real quick before we get into the readings tonight? We got to keep hammering that so people can get it. Because once you get it, when you look at TV, when you look at books, and when you look at newspapers, you'll never look at it the same. You'll look at it for what it is. It's war propaganda.
And now just knowing this information moving forward, just question to the chat, how will people moving forward, just knowing this information, how do you feel about this information? And do you understand why we get left out of pretty much all the laws that are written, that it doesn't specifically mention Negro, Black, and color, but they reference us on a grand scheme of things when they're giving their speeches, when they're saying what they will do verbally for us, but it's never written into any kind of law.
It's a great question. It's a great question too, because again, it just highlights the military occupation, and just highlights that we're prisoners of war on our own land. Here, before we even jump into the rest of the readings, we can just look here. Crimes of Title 18 United States Code. We've been seeing that a lot, even if in this definition of Indians, Section 1153, Title 18 United States Code. And some may say, okay, what does that code actually relate to? What is the meaning of that code? So definitely, before we jump into the readings, it's important for us to understand what this code is. So again, just basically crimes. It's a crime code. So anything regarding United States Code, Title 18, is going to relate to crimes. So you can state here. As you can see here. Then if we go a little further, crimes and criminal procedures, let's take a look here and seeing who actually has jurisdiction and enforces these codes. So I'll read this section here, load this up a little bit for you all. So it states jurisdiction and enforcement. The laws listed in the United States Code are enforced by a variety of agencies. Departments or agencies are assigned specific authorities by Congress. Again, Congress what makes the law, which can include enforcing specific sections of the U.S. Code. However, the laws in Title 18, crimes and criminal procedure, are enforced by agencies with law enforcement authorities such as the FBI and Department of Homeland Security. So they're clearly stating that the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, are the ones that will be enforcing all of those criminal procedures that we just saw within that Title II in regards to crimes and penalties that's being committed within the said Indian country. So again, just further.
DHS is Department of Homeland Security. We might have to vet that.
That one? Okay.
Yeah, I want to say that may be Department of Human Services. Department of Human Services is where child support comes up under.
Makes sense though.
As well as your what am I trying to say? What's the word, Chief Quietwater? Under Department of Human,
like government assistance and stuff.
Right. You get your TANF, you get your child support, right? Those are divisions under that department, but that's federal. So it may be Department of Homeland Security. We can probably figure that out. Or it may be Department of Human Services, which will put you up under it. I'm thinking it's going to be Department of Human Services because buried in this act is also the housing part. And so that comes up under the TANF and the Section 8. You see what I'm saying? So in order for you to live in the ghetto, because now we're talking about our history on this land, why did my parents' generation, which were maybe your grandparents, but my parents' generation, why did all of them pretty much come out of the ghetto? Right? Anybody who left their land in the country, right? When they moved to these cities, why were they in the ghetto? You see what I'm saying? And this comes up under that Housing Authority Act. That's going to come up out this 1968 Civil Rights Act.
That makes sense too, because they was definitely specifying also the domestic violations as well, as far as like domestic violence, but also in regards to the children's age and things of that nature. So I think you are correct in saying that that is the Department of Human Services.
And if you could drop those links, Chief Quietwater, to what he just pulled up, so the people in the chat can also have it for their records, because that's what we're all about. It's all about enlightening our people and educating everybody at the same time, because enough is enough.
Drop these in here for you there, Chief Quietwater. Then we'll get into these readings. All right, perfect. So I know last week we left off on page 10 at the very bottom. And it should be nature of the criminal jurisdiction. So I'll start off here. In general, notwithstanding any other provision of law, in addition to all powers of self-government recognized and affirmed by section 201 and 203, the powers of self-government of a participating tribe, including any participating tribes in the state of Maine, include the inherent power of that tribe, which is hereby recognized and affirmed to exercise special tribal criminal jurisdiction over all persons. Number 2, concurrent jurisdiction. The exercise of special tribal criminal jurisdiction by a participating tribe may be concurrent with the jurisdiction of the United States, of a state, or of both. So basically, what I'm getting within these two sections is that they're saying that on one hand, that the tribe is able to deal with their criminals how they please, but on another hand, just in the section below, that any of their criminal procedures has to be concurrent or has to go along with or play along with whichever United States code they have established, which again would be that Title 18 United States Code section. And if there is anything at the federal level, then they would have to make sure that their jurisdiction or their procedures align with that jurisdiction of the state, whichever state they may be pretty much in. Applicability, nothing in this section. A creates or eliminates any federal or state criminal jurisdiction over Indian country. So again, just reiterating exactly what I pointed out, that anything that the tribal courts of whichever recognized tribe may want to have as far as their procedures, they cannot go against any of the federal or state criminal jurisdiction or criminal procedures. Affects the authority of the United States or any state government that has been delegated authority by the United States to investigate and prosecute a criminal violation in Indian country. So again, none of these quote unquote sovereign, independent, recognized tribes are actually sovereign or independent if they have to continue to abide by a higher authority's rules, which would be either that state, and of course the highest one would be that United States government on the federal level. Exception, if victim and defendant are both non-Indian. In general, a participating tribe may not exercise special tribal criminal jurisdiction over an alleged offense other than obstruction of justice or assault of tribal justice personnel if neither the defendant nor the alleged victim is an Indian. Definition of victim in this paragraph, and with respect to a criminal proceeding in which a participating tribe exercises special tribal criminal jurisdiction based on a violation of a protection order, the term victim means a person specifically protected by a protection order that the defendant allegedly violated. Criminal conduct, a participating tribe may exercise special tribal criminal jurisdiction over a defendant for a covered crime that occurs in the Indian country of the participating tribe. And D, rights of defendants in a criminal proceeding in which a participating tribe exercises special tribal criminal jurisdiction, the participating tribe shall provide to the defendant, 1, all applicable rights under this act. 2, if a term of imprisonment of any length may be imposed, all rights described in section 202C. And 3, the right to a trial by an impartial jury that is drawn from sources that reflect a fair cross-section of the community and do not systemically exclude any distinctive group in the community, including non-Indians. And 4, all other rights whose protection is necessary under the Constitution of the United States in order for Congress to recognize and affirm the inherent power of the participating tribe to exercise special tribal criminal jurisdiction over the defendant. So I'll pause right here. Basically, it's just giving the definitions of certain procedures. So again, definition of the victim, criminal court, criminal conduct rather, as well as the right of the defendant. But also, as we see here, they're stating that the jury shall not be skewed pretty much to one particular group of people. But we see that is not the case when it comes to our group. We'll have juries where they're all, if we're going to use the term white, all Hispanic, and even excluding a particular group, which will be our group, to represent them. So I thought that was very key. Anybody kind of want to build on that before we continue? Or build
And
on
also like in B, how they said including non-Indians, still not specifically saying Negro, Black, and colored. So it's like they can be very, very specific. Everything around us, over us, under us, but just not including anything that has to do with Negro, Black, and colored.
Correct. And I would just go to section 4 as well, right up under your section B, where it says all other rights whose protection is necessary under the Constitution of the United States in order for Congress to recognize and affirm the inherent power of the participating tribe. This goes back to the Iroquois Confederacy Constitution, where they talked about nobody outside of the bloodline could have a say-so. So we can see what the European did when he copied that document. I spoke on that last week. We don't have to recreate the wheel. They used the template from the Iroquois Confederacy. And so that's basically the way they're operating the United States government. They want it where they run it, and you really don't have a say-so outside of them. Now, we'll turn around and call that racism, but they're actually piggybacking off of our great laws of peace. And in addition to that, anybody who's watching what Chief Biko just read, the only special jurisdiction that a tribe has is over domestic violence issues. So when you hear them talk about special jurisdiction, the only thing that an Indian tribe has special jurisdiction over was restraining orders and relationship situations. But even those special jurisdictions, the state or the United States government could still supersede over that situation. So we want to be specific for what we're reading for those that are, you may just be joining us tonight, just clicked on us and just trying to figure out what we're talking about. In this 1968 Indian Rights Act up until this point, they're playing daddy to these civilized tribes, or these recognized tribes, if you will, letting them know that, yeah, the only jurisdiction you got is on domestic violence stuff, and you really don't have that unless you come in alignment with the Constitution of our government. And that makes sense because they set up the Bureau of Indian Affairs when we read in the 1866 Indian Treaty, and then they put United States government employees in the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and then they're the ones fronting the money to these tribes. So of course, he who fronts the money calls the shots. So if the United States government is the one funding you, then ultimately you dancing to my tune.
Great point. Great point. And that kind of goes back to citing that DHS, that is the Department of Human Services. So like you stated, if they're going to have their law enforcement or their enforcement wing, i.e. their FBI, any of their other jurisdictions, any of their other group of people that's going to be enforcing these criminal procedures, they're also going to have that resource wing as well. Okay, we're going to make sure that we're cutting you off these amount of resources in regards to any of these acts that we'll read within this title.
And let me add one more thing on that, where Chief Quietwater read about including non-Indians. That's how you know that these people aren't the real American, because going back to the Great Law of Peace, Iroquois Constitution, you couldn't be a part of it if you weren't. You could join, let me be correct. You could join a tribe, but you didn't have any say-so. So here you prop these people up in Oklahoma, and you got non-Americans that are amongst those reservations, but who got alienated? the original people that never left, that were east of the Mississippi.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, great point.
And even in the Iroquois, what we were reading, like you said, they would allow outsiders to join, but they were very specific in saying that it was temporary. You know, you're really not a part of this, and they specifically said that it would be temporary.
Correct. They even mentioned how if we gave you the authority or gave you right to be included amongst us, it would end with you. So again, like it's not anything that your next
Right.
would inherit. It's going to end with you, and you still have no say so within our own government. So great point. Great point. I'll continue on E. Petitions to stay detention. In general, a person who has filed a petition for a writ of habeas corpus in a court of the United States under Section 203 may petition that court to stay further detention of that person by the participating tribe. Number 2, grant of stay. A court shall grant a stay described in paragraph 1 if the court finds that there is a substantial likelihood that the habeas corpus petition will be granted, and after giving each alleged victim in the matter an opportunity to be heard, finds by clear and convincing evidence that under conditions imposed by the court, the petitioner is not likely to flee or pose a danger to any person or the community if released. Petitions for writ of habeas corpus. In general, after a defendant has been sentenced by a participating tribe, the defendant may file a petition for a writ of habeas corpus in a court of the United States, Section 203 requirement. An application for a writ of habeas corpus on behalf of a person in custody pursuant to an order of a tribal court shall not be granted unless the applicant has exhausted the remedies available in the tribal court system. There is an absence of an available tribal corrective process, or circumstances exist that render the tribal corrective process ineffective to protect the rights of the applicant. Notice habeas corpus petitions. A participating tribe that has ordered the detention of any person has a duty to timely notify in writing such person of their rights and privileges under this section and under Section 203. So again, just further definitions in regards to what the procedures are underneath the tribal court, but again, still having to cite back to this 203 section, which I believe is that Title 18 of the United States Code. So again, they're listing off these procedures, but again, there still have to be concurrent or have to be aligned with that United States Code, Title 18.
Right. And if you don't like the outcome within the tribal court, you can also appeal it to the United States government court, which is a whole different government. So this is clearly—
They really don't have any power at all, to be honest.
Correct. Correct. That's exactly what it's showing us. You want to catch the next section, Chief Wildwater?
Yeah, well, we're on H. Is that where we at?
Yeah.
Okay. Reimbursement and grants to tribal governments. Number 1, reimbursement. A, in general, the Attorney General may reimburse the tribal government authorities or an authorized designee of a tribal government for expenses incurred in exercising special tribal criminal jurisdiction. B, eligible expenses for reimbursement under the subparagraph A shall include expenses and costs incurred relating to or associated with investigating, making arrests related to, making apprehensions for, prosecuting covered crimes, including costs involving the purchasing, collecting, and processing of sexual assault, forensic materials, detaining, providing supervision of, or providing services for personal charges with covered crimes, including costs associated with providing healthcare, providing indigent defense services for one or more persons charged with one or more covered crime, incarcerating, supervising, or providing treatment, rehabilitation, or reentry services for one or more persons charged with one or more covered crime.
It's a racket. It's a racket. It's a racket. Look at everything that will be covered by the United States government. Basically, they don't have. It's not going to cost them anything to track you down.
Got you. Right.
Well, all they got to do is submit a bill, submit a claim, and they're going to get reimbursed. So it's almost like it's not almost, it's like the United States government is incentivizing locking up
Right.
the people that are in said reservation. I'm just curious if anybody in the chat, I know you're, I can't see the chat. I'm sure you can, Quiet Water. I'm curious, did anybody grow up on a reservation that might be listening to us right now? What was your experience like? You know, if you grew up on a reservation, was it similar to what we experienced, those of us that had family that grew up in said projects? In other words, does a reservation run parallel with a project? I'm just curious if anybody in the chat shares on that while you're reading.
I posed the question. We'll see if anyone responds. So where did I leave off? Procedure. Yeah. Okay. Procedure. In general, reimbursements authorized under subparagraph A shall be in accordance with the rules promulgated by the Attorney General after consultation with Indian tribes and within 1 year after the date of enactment of the Violence Against Women's Act, Reauthorization Act of 2022. So these are new amendments, actually. Maximum reimbursement, the rules promulgated by the Attorney General under Clause I shall set a maximum allowable reimbursement to any tribal government or an authorized designee of any tribal government in a year period, and may allow the Attorney General to establish conditions under which a tribal government or authorized designee of a tribal government may seek a waiver to maximize allowable reimbursement requirement established under subclause I, and to waive the maximum allowable reimbursement requirements established under subclause I for a tribal government or any authorized designee of a tribal government, if the conditions established by the Attorney General under item AA are met by that tribal government or authorized designee. Okay. Timeliness of reimbursement. To maximum extent, the practicable, the Attorney General shall, not later than 90 days after the date of which the Attorney General receives a qualifying reimbursement request from a tribal government or an authorized designee of a tribal government, reimburse the tribal government or authorized designee, notify the tribal government or authorized designee of the reason by which the Attorney General was unable to issue the reimbursement, not later than 30 days after the date on which a tribal government or authorized designee of a tribal government reaches the annual maximum allowable reimbursement for the tribal government or an authorized designee established by the Attorney General under clause III, notified by the tribal government or authorized designee that the tribal government has reached its annual maximum allowable reimbursement. So like you said, it just seems like they just have, it's a money thing, basically. It is basically, and it's really focused on domestic crimes.
Yeah, I would say I'd be really interested to see as well how often they go over that maximum amount and how that correlates with the imprisonment of people on these said reservations as well. Because basically what we've been reading thus far just all covers crime and criminal procedures. So again, kind of just going back to that prisoner of war statement, and we're seeing the military occupation of those that went west of the Mississippi as well.
Correct. And basically, if you scroll up real quick, this whole section she just read, there's no way that you can't get paid. That's what I'm taking from this. I mean, they're giving you every opportunity. Basically, you cannot lose the general reimbursements, the maximum reimbursements. Scroll down a little bit more to the next page. Maxable or liable. You know, you got up to a year to get your money back, then not later than 90 days after the date on which the Attorney General receives a qualifying reimbursement request from a tribal government. So basically, they're giving you every option as a subcontractor, because that's basically what these tribes are. The government is saying, hey, we're going to sub this out to you. Here's an option. We're not telling you that you need to lock people up for domestic violence, but if you do, we're gonna make sure we take care of you. You're gonna get reimbursed on it. So, and they're breaking down all the different terms. You're gonna get your fiat, basically. That's what I'm taking from it. Yeah, we're gonna straighten you. You do what you need to do. You file in a timely manner. We're gonna hit you off.
Agreed. I think he left off on eligibility.
Okay, eligibility for participating tribes in Alaska. A tribal government or an authorized designee of a tribal government of any Indian tribe designated as a participant tribe under Subtitle B of Title 8 of the Violence Against Women Act, Reauthorization Act of 2022, shall be eligible for reimbursement in accordance with the paragraph of expenses incurred in exercising special tribal criminal jurisdiction under that subtitle. Grants. The Attorney General may award grants to tribal governments or authorized designees of the tribal governments, including a tribal government or an authorized designee of a tribal government of an Indian tribe designated as a participating tribe under subtitle B of Title 8 of the Violence Against Women's Act, Reauthorization Act of 2022, to strengthen the tribal criminal justice system, to assist Indian tribes in exercising special tribal criminal jurisdiction, including for law enforcement, including the capacity of law enforcement, court personnel, or other non-law enforcement entities that have no federal or state arrest authority. Agencies must have been designated by an Indian tribe as responsible for maintaining public safety within the territorial jurisdiction of the Indian tribe, to enter information into it and obtain information from national crime information databases. Prosecution, trial and appellate courts, including facility maintenance, renovation and rehabilitation, supervision systems, detentions and corrections, including facilities, maintenance, renovation and rehabilitation, treatment, rehabilitation, and reentry programs and services, culturally appropriate services and assistance for victims and their families, criminal codes and rules of procedure, appellate procedure and evidence, to provide indigent criminal defendants with licensed defense counsel at no cost to the defendant in criminal proceedings in which a participating tribe prosecutes covered crimes, to ensure that in criminal proceedings in which a participating tribe exercises special tribal criminal jurisdiction, jurors are summoned, selected, and instructed in a manner consistent with all applicable requirements, and to accord victims of covered crimes rights that are similar to the rights of a crime victim described in section 3771A of Title 18 United States Code, consistent with the tribal law and custom. So they're just very detailed how they break down what is covered, what's not covered. And again, it's mostly focused on the domestic side of everything.
That and just the criminal stuff as well. Like
Yeah.
they're promoting the locking up of their people. Like, we'll let you do renovations, continue to build as many detention centers as you need, all for free, basically, because grants don't have to be paid back. So yeah, they're definitely promoting the incarceration of the people there.
Right. And this is for Alaska, correct? If you scroll back up, this section right here is, I believe this is for Alaska. Yeah. D, eligibility for participating tribes in Alaska. So what I'm seeing here, whether you in Alaska or whether you're one of those tribes in Oklahoma, they're empowering the woman in all of these tribes. You even see this act in 2022. What was the name of the act? If you scroll back up, Chief Biko. Yeah.
Violence Against Women Act, Reauthorization Act of 2022.
Yeah. So not what it looks like, what it is they're making the men in these tribes out to be the boogeyman, right? Not saying that's whatever's going on, because this was in there in 1968. So how does that rhyme with our story never being specifically defined by Congress of what a Negro, Black, or colored is, even though the United States government was waging unlawful war against the Negro, Black, and colored, destroying our towns, taking our inventions, running us off our land, which is what we call the Great Migration, when people were leaving the North, going into the South. That never got corrected. So you can look at what happened with us starting in the 70s. Our women started running to the state, right? To get what's that act? The Housing Act that's buried in here. What is it? Title 8. So it started there where our women were empowered, right? That there were benefits to not be with the man. So you can see the same thing going on these tribes where they're going to build a whole jail and prison system around domestic violence on these tribal lands.
Great point. Great, like how you paralleled the two. And yeah, that's the Fair Housing Act. So yeah, it seems to be the same play being ran specifically again in that Alaska tribe territory, but also even within the reservations as well.
And you got some comments in the chat as far as, have you gotten any comments from the chat with the question you posed?
Let me check.
And that would be interesting to know, just anybody who actually.
No, Empress Awaken. She said she don't know of any American Indians melanated that ever grew up on a reservation. My grandmother owned 188 acres of land in Mississippi, and my mom and her sisters, they left in brothers, moved up north. So it doesn't look like anyone grew up on a reservation.
Okay, nobody chimed in with that experience. I'm sure somebody has. That would be a great parallel to run, because we know what was happening to us through the 70s and the 80s. Once they ended Jim Crow, that's that's 1964. So less than 10 years later, now you get chemical warfare within our neighborhoods, right? You get heroin first during the 70s. That's where you see your Bumpy Johnsons and your Frank Lucases, right? You hear stories about them. And of course, the military was the distribution arm for that. You know, let's go ahead and we can close on that by building on this real quick. You know, they always show us when it comes to the war on drugs, right? And I think if people don't understand the structure and understand our history on this land, they don't understand that there's manufacturing, there's distribution, and then there's a dealer. So if we go back to the heroin era, that was coming out of Vietnam. So interesting that you go to war in Vietnam, and then your military is distributing the heroin back to North America. How do we know that? Look at Frank Lucas' story, right? So you dump that in our neighborhood. So now we're dealing with chemical warfare. Then you go to the cocaine era of the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. The manufacturer of the cocaine was coming out of South America. Who was the distribution arm? The military again. How can we say that? You got Oliver North in the 1980s, who was caught red-handed as the distribution arm. So they're never focusing on locking up the manufacturer or the distribution arm. They always focus on the lowest level of the totem pole, which is the dealer. And so what they do is they glorify the dealer, the Rick Ross, the Frank Lucas, the Bumpy Johnson. But if you think the dealer is balling, imagine the money that the distributor was getting, or imagine the money that the manufacturer was getting. So this whole game is played out at this point because there never was a war on drugs. It was actually chemical warfare against us. Then you fast forward to now, you had a 20-year run in Afghanistan. Who's the leading producer of the opium plant, which is where you get your pills from? Afghanistan. So how was the opium getting into North America, which causes the pill epidemic? Here we go with the military again as the distribution arm. The only thing that's changed now is the dealer used to be us, the men. Now who's the dealer? Chief Quietwater, Chief Biko, and anybody in the chat. Who's the dealer today of the opium plant, AKA the pill epidemic?
The government, right?
Not the government.
Or
Who is the dealer? Who is the one that does the hand-to-hand transaction of the pills?
I don't know. What'd you say, Biko?
I said the pharmacist.
The doctor. The
Oh, yeah,
doctor is the
right.
drug dealer.
Right.
Doctor, let me say it again. The doctor is the drug dealer. If he doesn't write the prescription, you can't get it. So
Right.
I've lived long enough to watch, quote unquote, it went from people that, quote unquote, worked off pagers, worked off cell phones, hung at corner stores, running up the cars. That's the image they portrayed of the dealer. Now it's the doctor in his practice, in his office.
Right.
Just to even bring it even further to today, now you have the fentanyl. Fentanyl, and where is that coming from? You know, mostly
Directly
from China. So now we get the mask of, you know, the pandemic and things of that nature, wanting to, you know, blame them for certain stuff, but also now you're still pumping it in from that same location. And who's doing it? The military. So now definitely great points there. It's all pretty much the same play, just different substances at this point.
That's right. Did you just bring up Operation Warp Speed? Yeah. I don't know how many people know that, but you can go on YouTube right now and put in Operation Warp Speed. And we were up on that when the pandemic first popped out. It's the same script, y'all. The military was the distribution arm of the vaccine.
there's basically just been an underlying war that just has never stopped, basically.
Correct. And how we forget, because we got the memory of a fruit fly, when they introduced Operation Warp Speed, Donald Trump also enacted the Defense Production Act, which hadn't been enacted since the Korean War, so that they could hurry up and mass produce. So once their military got all their little substations set up over here with the vaccine readily available, so now they're no longer just waging chemical warfare on we don't have communities anymore. So when people say community, you're lying. There is no quote unquote black town in North America. There's nowhere that you can go to in the United States jurisdiction where we run the hospital, the bank, the church, the businesses, everything. We don't have that. So we don't even really have neighborhoods anymore because we've been gentrified. That's a whole nother war. But the doctors and the nurses, if y'all remember in 2020, they were getting an additional $10,000 to $20,000 to put COVID on your death certificate. Did y'all forget that? So it didn't matter whether you died from a stomach flu or old age. Y'all want to chime in on that? So you had the warp speed going on with the distribution through the military. Then you had the doctors, they were able to basically put everybody up under COVID-19 on their death certificate. So basically they were getting bonuses. And it's like, go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, I was going to say it was an eye opener for me when COVID first started. And before it was really mainstream on the news and people were like freaking out. All of the directives were coming from the War Department. They were coming from, you know, they were having those meetings, and they were war people that were actually dictating when the vaccines would be released and, you know, where they would go first and things like that. And that was before it really hit the media. So it started really with if you got the information from the government and from the War Department, you knew before it hit really mainstream basically. That was an eye opener for me, that was definitely a military mission.
You're absolutely correct. And let's be transparent with the people that's listening and anybody who listens to this. We were listening to those weekly briefings. That's something that we did on this channel. Every week, that general would come out and he would brief as to where they are as far as that warp speed program. And let's not forget one of the key components. Every governor knew about warp speed. Every governor and every mayor knew, but they didn't expose it. So when you get armed with the right information, and then like Chief Quietwater said, you're watching the subliminal lies being pumped through TV and being pumped through social media, putting all these people in a frantic. We were never frantic because we were informed. We already knew what was going on. And then how people forget, January 2022, Supreme Court said, oops, a mandate is not law. So that was a litmus test for the United States government to verify to itself that the citizens are just that dumb. And it's no disrespect to nobody who took the vaccine. But the Supreme Court admitted in January 22 that a mandate is not law. But how many people got scared because the TV said it? Y'all want to build on that? We've lived through.
And again, those briefings was public. It didn't take a lot to even get that information. That stuff was literally right there in your face. And people had no clue that they were actually giving briefings every single week in regards to that. So again, it's the lack of knowledge and the lack of information.
Correct. And you're the one, Chief Quietwater, that informed us. You gave us the testing procedures from the Federal Drug Administration. And I remember reading the procedure, and it was self-explanatory. Before you admit a drug into society, it's supposed to go through 5 to 7 years of animal testing. So that made common sense to me, understand the procedure that, oh, okay, they're basically just putting out, it's almost like this fentanyl right now. It's basically like we're putting a new drug in society. We're going to get the FDA to bypass its normal animal testing procedures, which is 5 to 7 years. We're going to subliminally pump this message through all media outlets. Now the Supreme Court came out a year ago and said that a mandate isn't law. So again, no disrespect to people who took it, but you got to ask yourself, what happens if you took bad dope during the pandemic and you start getting harsh side effects and something happens to you? The government has already protected itself by saying, nobody told you to do that. That wasn't a law. A mandate isn't law. So here we go all over again with they need your consent to fuck you over. Y'all, anything y'all want to say on that?
No, I think, shoot, everybody done pretty much nailed or hammered it down with that one. Like you said, a mandate is not it being forced on you. Again, you have a decision to make. We're gonna make that decision very hard for you, but again, you still have a decision to make. So you decided to take something that was not forced on you. Again, our hands are clean if this is what the United States government is stating. And I just kind of want to show, because I was able to pull up one of the briefings, just the amount of views, and this is 2 years now, 1.3 thousand, so 1,300 views in 2 years. And this is straight from the U.S. Army of the one of the briefings.
And the fact that there's over 1 million, 1 million subscribers.
So again, they have to, I guess, put the information out there.
Yes.
We don't have to promote it. We don't have to promote it for you all, but the information is out there. It's viewable. It's public knowledge now. Whether or not you go and view it for yourself is up to you. And we see that not a lot of people viewed it. So again, this goes back to say what you stated earlier, both of you all, Chief Quietwater and Alligator, how our lack of knowledge shows.
Can you
know,
put that
change.
link in the chat for people? Because I'm glad you pulled that up while you stay on that screen real quick, because water seeps to its own level. And everything we're showing y'all, we're giving you proof of claim. Operation Warp Speed was a real thing, but that's critical, Chief Biko. Here we are 2 years after, and only 1,000 people was even watching the military briefings. So it just shows how, damn, how can I say this without offending anybody? It's like you got sheeps and you got the sheep herder. We've been moving like sheep herders because we've been informed. But unfortunately, a lot of my family, remember, they started even threatening, coercing more. Okay, so they were pumping it through the social media. They were pumping it through your news stations. Then they started saying you can't travel unless you take the dope. Then they started telling people you can't continue to work unless you take the dope, right? It got worse and worse and worse. And then they turned around and was like, well, even though we threaten you with your job, we
Right.
still, like, it still ain't law.
Okay.
And I think it was like you said, it was a test. And it definitely separated people in society in regards to who fell for it and who didn't. And I think it still came down to just being informed and having something to stand on, rather than just being a sheep and just going off of what you're told, or, being threatened, and not really understanding that how things work. Basically, like you said, a mandate is not a law.
But yeah,
So yes, go ahead, Chief Biko.
I was gonna say it just it shows what our interests are as a group. What we focus on is of no importance, as a collective, versus things that actually are gonna be actually beneficial for us to know as far as information. Like I said, 1.3, but we have this here, 2 months has 1 million views. So again, I mean, it just shows.
But the fact that they have over 1 million subscribers,
yeah,
what's up with that?
Yeah.
Hold on, you know what? Let's put the cherry on top, Chief Biko. Because a lot of people don't know about this either, and we're getting to that point. Let's pull up the 1866 Indian Treaty hearing. The first ever was held last year. And for everybody that's in the chat or that listens to this video, we'll build on that when we get there. We're not just online doing this. What we're trying to do is raise the frequency of our people, because how many of us actually know what Chief Biko was about to pull up, that they actually had the first ever 1866 Indian Treaty hearing, and that pertains to us, y'all. This hearing pertains to us. How many people actually watched this video up until this point? This was 8 months. Less than 1,000 people have actually watched this. In this hearing, you've got people playing to be you, talking about resources that you're supposed to have because it's your birthright, and less than 1,000 people are even up on this. This, y'all want to build on that? It's sad.
Man, I think you just explained it. We have in this video, which we'll be showing, in one of the recaps as well, we have Maxine Waters talking about who we are, or who we're supposed to be as, again, that freedman term, which we've already debunked. But again, we'll have these individuals who look nothing like us, but are acting or playing a role as if they are us. And again, this is something that they had with the United States. Again, what, July? I think it was July, so almost coming up a year now. And, the numbers speak for themselves. Again, 932 views within 8 months. You see, we dropped the comment in here 8 months ago. But yeah, it just shows the lack of knowledge or a lack of awareness of what's actually going on, especially when people are trying to pretend to be us and speaking on behalf of us, but none of the people that really should represent us are in the room. So yeah, it's just a sad realization to me.
Lack of knowledge, reparation for a
Yeah.
lack of knowledge. Chief Whitewater, go ahead.
No, I agree. I definitely agree. But I'm just looking at the views at the 3 hours straight of DC Young Fly got 6.1 million views.
Wow.
No, but I agree with both of you. Same thing, just the lack of knowledge. We don't seek it.
Yeah, it's sad because everybody's at the table breaking bread and getting resources. And you know, sometimes I ask myself, how are we surviving as a group of people? Because we're not even at the table. You know, like Chief Quietwater just pointed out, a comedian gets 6 million views, but the first ever 1866 Indian Treaty, where these people actually talked about the Trail of Tears, and they actually talked about, they skipped over the history, right? They nitpicked what happened. But the beauty of that hearing is they gave a window for people to respond. And it's just sad that the majority of us don't even know this happened, don't even know that window existed, don't even know that, you know, yeah. Sheesh.
Nah, yeah, and shit, I think one of the only documents where we even see anything relevant that may pertain to our group would be NEGRO, and that was in one of these 1866 Indian treaties. So again, it just goes to show you even more how the lack of knowledge for our group still continues to bite us in the ass, because we, like you stated, didn't even know about this particular hearing that was being held.
It's been a good bill, y'all. Yeah, we where I'm at with it is we got to have a conversation with those people that are still living, that have lied for 55 years about the civil rights era and what actually happened. And damn, it's almost like going to a funeral and your grandma and your granddaddy who raised you your whole life, they wait till a funeral to tell you that person wasn't your daddy. That's kind of the equivalent of where we are as a group of people. We got people that are our elders that have been lying to us. And the more that we wake up, the more that we pass these documents around, the more that our people start to understand Negro, Black, and colored has never been recognized through Congress or defined by the United States government through Congress. The more of us get that, and the more of us start having more intellectual conversations with these puppets and these sellouts, they're going to have to sit down and tell the truth, but then put yourself in their shoes. If you know that that wasn't that kid's daddy and you waited that person's whole life and waited till they got to an adult to tell them the truth, that person may not fuck with you no more, right? I think that's where these elders are right now as we mature and really, because we got to learn on our own. Y'all ain't telling us. So we got to do the homework on our own and figure out what happened. And as we figure out, at some point, they're going to have to start saying, you know what, we're going to have to start telling on ourselves and tell the truth. And we may look at y'all and be like, thanks for sharing, but get the fuck out the house. Anything y'all want to say on that? Like 55 years of lies. What if they want to come out now and start being honest? What would be your stance on that, Chief Quietwater, Chief Biko?
I would say that it depends on the reason. Well, yeah, I don't know. I just really think that a lot of our elders, like you said, like my parents and like you said, your mother, don't know. You know what I'm saying? So we would just have to do.
No, not I'm talking about the people who were a part of the civil rights movement.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Know what
happened. Okay. Yeah, it's time for them to get out the way. That's it, period.
Yeah, I think it goes back to us being in alignment with what we read in that the great law, the great peace. Like, hey, you are now enemy of this Confederacy. You've committed treason. We'll take the information, but the damage is done. It's 55 plus years. You waited 55 plus years, and now just to say something, why? Because people are now waking up and being hip to game. Nah, it's too late. You are, you exiled, just like what we just read with the Dr. Carter G. Woodson quote. You played on the people's ignorance for far too long. Can't forgive that. Can't allow you to come back and reap any benefits that we may be able to recoup because we know who we are now. So yeah, we'll take the information that you have. Appreciate it, but outside of that, go ahead and chuck the deuces to him.
Chief Quietwater, where you at with that? When we align that with the great law of peace, where treason is treason.
Yeah, I mean, they're really the enemy. I mean, yeah. To me, they really are the enemy because they're working against what we're trying to do in regards to the forward movement of where we need to be. So definitely, I think that they are the enemy, and there's nothing that they can do for us at this point.
Well, I mean, they'll give us a story. Like they may say, hey, you know, here's what happened, da, 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 da. But then from our standpoint, it's like, okay, 55 years later.
Right. And we're reading the truth. So yeah, it's nothing they can really say, in my opinion.
Because we do understand that there were people in the rooms when this stuff was being written.
Right.
We understand that.
Right.
So King was one person. It's a lot of other people that did not get assassinated.
Right.
That have been walking
Jesse
around.
Jacksons and the Al Sharptons and yeah.
Right. So they all knew. The question is, how do we respond as that third generation? Because our parents were teenagers at that time, so there's no way they would have known. We're the grandchildren of those adults that were, you see what I'm saying? Like if you look at those people, they're in their 70s and 80s now. So those would be our grandparents. So now,
and it's unfortunate that they're still the go-to people that still speak for us. So at some point, we as a group, our generation, Chief Biko generation as a group, at some point, we gonna have to enforce. They just go ahead and just move out the way.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be some pull-up.
Yeah.
Action happening. Like stated earlier, I mean, everybody knows we got this information. Everybody within the chat, we give the information, got the documents, and it's time to stand on them. Say, hey, why you keep calling us, you know, African American, colored, Negro, and none of these terms have any lawful standing or power within this government? You the enemy.
Correct. What percentage of kickback? Yeah. What percentage of kickback have y'all been getting from the whole Pan-Africanist movement? And yeah, because see, you got to realize it's a money play, right? So here's another thing to think about. Would they be willing to, okay, so it's a double-edged sword. Number one, the people are waking up, so you can't fleece them no more. Number two, what if the United States government is getting ready to discard everybody that partnered with them in that era, right? Because you got to remember, it's a money thing. At the end of the day, why would you sell somebody out unless it was for resources? Right? This whole Pan-Africanist movement, Black Caucus, caping for Africa, you know, still can't write up any legislation to federally protect quote unquote Black people. Well, we know why now. We don't have to play dumb now. The Black Caucus can't write any legislation to protect. Damn, ain't that a bitch? It's called the Black Caucus, but it can't write legislation for Black people because Black people have never been recognized by the United States government, Congress, and law. So that whole caucus is a front for immigrants. Now, how long were they thinking that we were going to live before figuring this shit out?
Well, they got what's that? 71. They got 52 years out of us. So yeah, it's time to go ahead and stop all that shit and start checking these folks. They can no longer speak for our group. That goes for the Black Caucus, that goes for any of the civil rights leaders that are still around. None of y'all. And that's just the time we're gonna have to be on.
You want to close us out, Chief Quietwater?
Yeah, it's a great build. I definitely agree with both of you. They need to go ahead and sit down somewhere. And thank you to everybody in the chat tonight in regards to tapping in and sharing information and all of that good stuff. And that's about it.
Yeah.